for the final contribution by Bintam Bare, whose practice is researching the intersection of water and sound cultures in Palestine. She's looking at Palestinian practices that challenge colonial ways of understanding the world and works with the voice as a tap that can tap into different bodies of water across time. And in this way, she's interested in how the voice also delineates time and can shape temporary collectivities. Bintam Bare has been working with collective readings and choirs for some time, and it's also what we're going to do together today. So in this work that's called In Defense of Ephra, you're invited to a multi-vocal gathering with the Thames and the River Ephra, which is one of the tributaries that's mostly a sewer today, an underground river in the south of London. And the work asks, how does voice come into our relationship with bodies of water? Bintam Bare, over to you.
I feel like the question that Marlene just asked, how does the voice come into contact with bodies of water? How does it help us commune with bodies of water? Zahra has already begun helping us answer that question. But yeah, I wrote a poem for the Thames, for the Ephra, for the Tate, and for you. And if we can begin distributing the poem, that would be really nice. Grab yourself a copy. It's 2 pages long. We're going to read it together in a variety of ways. I don't think we can do one each, right? Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, maybe two to three per one of you. You'll notice at the top of the poem, so I'm so happy that there are people who have practiced choir with us before here with us. So they're in a minute, yeah. Stay where you are for now, and then we will, if you'd like to join, obviously, stand up with us in a second. There's a little buzz that begins when people find their reading partners, which I really appreciate. So in a second, I think everyone will be able to access a poem through a friend or a neighbor, or in their own hands. Okay, cool. So, we have a few more. I mean, I would benefit from having one also. Thank you. Okay, cool. I thought Jarell said, this is a good one. Like, this is one of the better poems. Okay, cool. Oh, wait. Do you wanna? Okay, read together. Okay, cool. So, if everyone has a poem or knows where they can access a poem, if you'd like to join this exercise, please join us in standing up and separating yourselves into the groups that are written at the top of the poem. So if you're in group 1, I don't know, where's group 1? Raise your hands. So group 1, just separate yourselves a little bit, tiny little bit over there. Group 2, group 3, group 4, there are 4 groups. So you're already kind of in the group, so just find yourselves a little bit. Okay, everyone found their groups? Group 4, someone's raising their hand. Group 4, group 1. Okay, group 2. Group 3. Awesome. Okay, so just for 1 minute, we're going to do a warming up exercise, and then we're going to begin reading the poem, and I will tell you a little bit about how to read the poem. So just look at me for 1 second, and I would like for you to join me in a little hum, but just to begin recognizing one another's voices. And I think the practice of singing together is kind of inherently a practice of also listening to one another. And listening to one another collectively is a very different experience from listening to one another individually. And I started this practice because I fucking hate singing. And I'm really good at it. So I wanted to stop doing the singing to myself and listening to myself, and I wanted to do more of the listening to other people because I think it's voicing together is really beautiful. So let's start by doing that. So think of a tone in your voice. I'll give you some examples. The rule in practice, in choir practice, everyone who's been to choir practice knows I make a fool of myself first, then I please ask you to make a fool of yourself with me. Okay? So here's a tone, okay? Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Right? Think of one of these, not necessarily the ones that I just gave you an example of. Keep it in your mind and keep your mouth closed and take a deep breath and then say that tone. Keep it going for as long as you can. Long, 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 long breath. And then when that breath is over, you don't have to breathe again. Like the next one does not have to be a hum again. Okay, cool. And then, we were harmonizing really beautifully just then, but the next one, do the hum again and try to find one another, okay? So we were in different tones, and the longer that the tone goes, I want you to try and listen for the tones that exist in the room and find one that you like and then join it, and then we'll aggregate somewhere, and then we'll be harmonizing differently. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Awesome. For the next one, I would like you to do that, but then also make a big ball in your mouth like this. And then open your mouth, okay? In a little, really, kind of probably really ugly looking circle, right? Sorry, thank you. That's the spirit. Okay. 1, 2, 3, in breath. You guys sound really lovely. Okay. Yes, that one. Okay, I want to try doing a hum again and again. Doesn't really matter where tonally you land, but hum with us again and again. And then I'm going to make our hum a little bit rhythmic, okay? So I want you to, as you hum, get louder and louder, and then I'll stop us. Louder and louder, and then I'll stop us. Louder and louder, and then I'll stop us, okay? So make sure to measure your breaths. People sometimes get a little bit dizzy when they're doing this. If you do get dizzy, take your chin and put it on your chest, and find one place on the ground to look at, okay? Cool. We begin. Open mouth. That sounds so cool. Okay, now, in order to lose our tone, or in order to get louder, we're going to have to lose our tone a little bit, become a little bit off-tuned, or micro-tuned, okay? So, I'll do it, make a fool of Dina first, then you, okay? Ha, ha, ha. Okay, cool. Ha. Louder. Thank you. Okay, now we feel ready to use our voices a little bit? Okay, cool. Now, look at your poem, okay? What we'll do first is, let's read this poem. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm just gonna be a little bit prescriptive. I apologize for this. Choir sessions are usually not like this. I'm not that much of a dictator, however. I don't know if you guys agree. But okay. So what we'll do first is we'll read this poem, start to finish, and then read it again, start to finish, okay? So it's 2 pages, you go back to the beginning, and then read it again. But, okay, so the only instructive I have for this is that usually when we begin to read a poem together, we rely on one another to make the sounds. So what I want is, instead of reading like this and waiting for the sound to aggregate, that we consider that we can hear both our own selves and what is happening around us. Again, it's more than anything else a listening practice, okay? So we read the poem, we read it loud, and we want to enunciate as much as we can. When we enunciate while reading it for the first time, we are not going to sync with one another very well, okay? So I will try and give us a rhythm using this microphone, using my usurper's soapbox. Okay, cool. Everyone can see the poem? Yeah. Okay, cool. 1, 2, 3. The scale that sends wet like a river to wet like a dream to wet like a pot of piss next to a sickly gray stream fed by the blood of 1,000 burning children. Does the bubble made of latex let the water in? 1,000 streams pay their taxes in one big Thames. Wet like most of the blood that sears, wet like fossils flowing, burning, wet like the memory of a baby born near the river Jordan. He does not shriek. His mother weeps. The Thames bursts at the seams for my blood sugar, blood money, blood drought, blood relative, to beg in his sickly gray bed. Please, for the river Thames. Sorry, I meant Ephra. Sorry, I meant Amazon. Sorry, I meant Euphrates. Sorry, I always mean Gaza, and a river of blood, muck, and piss. I know you remember him. You remember every broken pipe, every broken goddess Mitra, every old fish that told a tale with its tail shaking with amphetamine rush. Back to us, as just want to teach him how. The Thames remembers, washes in rather than washing away, washes in Blavatnik's name with the blood of my cousin, Blavatnik. I always mean the river that cuts Gaza in half or stitches it back together, drowns a bulldozer, breaks the dam, gets in the cracks where no fingers can go. Only the utterus burns the name. Blavatnik at the seams. This is my home. One more time. The scale that sends wet like a river to wet like a dream to wet like a pot of piss next to a sickly gray stream fed by the blood of 1,000 burning children. Does the bubble made of latex let the water in? 1,000 streams pay their taxes in one big Thames. Wet like most of the blood that sears, wet like fossils flowing, burning, wet like the memory of a baby born near the river Jordan. He does not shriek. His mother weeps. The Thames bursts at the seams for my blood sugar, blood money. Blood drought, blood relative, to beg in the sickly gray bed. Please, for the river Thames. Sorry, I meant Ephra. Sorry, I meant Amazon. Sorry, I meant Euphrates. Sorry, I always mean Gaza, and a river of blood and muck and piss. No, you remember him. You remember every broken pipe, every broken goddess Mitra, every old fish that told a tale with its tail shaking with an amphetamine rush. Back to us. I just want to teach him how. The Thames remembers, washes in rather than washing away, washes in Blavatnik's name with the blood of my cousin. Blavatnik. I always mean the river that cuts Gaza in half or stitches it back together, drowns a bulldozer, breaks the dam, gets in the cracks where no fingers can go. Only the utterance bursts the name, Blavatnik at the seams. This is my home. Okay, thank you for listening to that and reciting it. I hope your breath is okay. So now we will utilize the groups that we're in, and if it says 1, then group 1 reads it, 2, 4, and so on and so forth. Okay, shall we try that format of the reading? No way! Hi! Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So we were 1, 2, is that 3 and 4? Cool. Okay, all you have to do is read it together. If you'd like, you can now face one another. You don't have to see me anymore. How are we doing on time? You know what the time is? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Okay, so everyone can see your poem. Okay, cool. Group 1, go. Cool, thank you. I would like to nominate one of the groups to be a yelling group. I have 2 hands going up here simultaneously without seeing even one another. This is group 2. Okay, so like a dream too wet. Yell your parts. 5 minutes? Okay, cool. So we have 5 minutes left. We'll just do this whole reading again. This group is yelling. You guys are not even ready for this. Okay. In the meantime, continue doing this. What I'll do is I will go and play some music next to the sounds that you guys are making. Cool? You will yell. I wonder if I would like to nominate another group that would like to grace us with a rhythmic percussive clap that goes just like this. We have one person who is volunteering their entire group. Thank you, Aisha. Okay, cool. So group 1 is the clapping group. Okay. Group 1. Oh, right, you need your hands. Oh, yeah, beat on your chest. Thank you. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, every second person can clap fully, and the people who have papers in their hands, yeah, okay. So what we'll start with is you guys doing your clap, and do it like as loudly as you know how. We have some choir members in here. Go for it. You know how to do it. Yes, you know how to clap. Begin when you're ready. 1, 2, 3. The scale that sends wet like a river to wet like it's just really hard to keep your rhythm while you do the thing. Group 3, please start to clap as well. Group 3? Okay, start from the top. We'll do it one last time with a clap, and everybody's yelling now, okay? Because the music is quite loud. Oh yeah, it's really hard to keep tempo while you're clapping, but I believe in you. Yeah. Are we done? Okay, one last time. And we're over time, so whenever you're ready, begin clapping and let's go. you. Thank you. What do we do next?
Thank you so much, Bintambare. We're almost out of time, but we're going to have a really short micro Q&A. Aisha and Sarah, if you could join us really quickly.
It's also this side. Oh, yeah, that's true. I'll see this cool. I can just disconnect. Wait a minute, I can disconnect this off. I'm just trying to kick it off. Yeah.
Woo-hoo. Is that working?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you all so much. And I also want to keep in mind Ismail Marika's work that we heard at the beginning of the session as well, because he can't join us for the Q&A. So just to sort of have that present. And I think the voice would be a really nice place to kind of speak from. And when we heard Ishmael's piece at the beginning, I was also thinking of the songline as a grounding in ancestral connection across time and in relation to place, so how voice can do that. And I was wondering if maybe each of you could speak to like the role of the voice in your practices, because in all three works that we've heard today, your voice has played a really important role, or a collective voice, or a body of voices. Maybe we start from there.
Can I just say something?
And you also have a Will's voice to share.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say that I was really grateful for your invocation, because I know I'm not alone in being really happy and privileged to be here, but also wishing that we were marching for Palestine and for Lebanon. So thank you.
That we can bring it in a lot of places with us.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
The voice.
right. Why don't you go first?
Oh, shit. Yeah, I think I've been... so I've been singing a lot like throughout my whole life, but then I started thinking about the voice in a more serious way when I understood the kind of capacity for touch without touching. And I think this is something that a lot of us here in this room have already thought about a lot, and it's just in the issue of like wanting to reach as far as you can using the waves that you can transmit from your body, that there's like a physical element to the waves that reach another person, that there's a necessity in touching one another, in like physically moving one another, in physically shaking one another, and that can have like a chemical impact inside of another's body that is not touching us right now. And the fact that it works across time as well. So inherently in the material of the voice, it comes from one and it moves to two, and in between those two, time has passed by the time it reaches you. And yeah, I think that's a really, like for me, a really good metaphor for transmitting the voices into the future, especially if they're coming from living flesh and bodies, which we've all used, or Zahra specifically actually invoked the fact that the body and the voice in the body is a particular archive that merits its own respect.
Yeah, I think, I think coming from my context, I don't necessarily think of Islam as an aniconic tradition, but I do come from a space where there is a kind of aniconic traditions are pervasive. And I've always been thinking about the ways in which, in certain aniconic traditions, the sonic is privileged over the seen, voice is privileged over vision. And there's an idea there that somehow the divine or spirit travels through voice in a way that vision cannot really compare. Or I guess, there's that image of Moses kind of collapsing, the Mount Sinai collapsing in that moment where Moses saw a fraction of God's light. But but Moses had been communing with God through voice for ages at that point. So I'm really interested in that capacity, that kind of ephemeral, dynamic nature of sound and its capacity to move, to transmit things in mysterious ways. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but yeah.
No, it does, yeah, thank you. Aisha, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So with this piece, I mean, I made it so long ago, so I'm trying to remember all the impulses behind it. But one of the things I was thinking about was blurring this threshold between the human and non or more than human voice. And so the voices that you heard were my own, Reem Shadid and Bettina Wurzel. So we were sort of blurring the registers between these, the vocalizations. The sound artist and sound designer I worked with, Will Saunders, was also, I approached him because he works a lot with infrasonics. And so one of the things we were thinking about in terms of communication and voice was thinking about bass and how it travels through your body and how you might not hear it with your ears, but you kind of feel it with your body. And finally, I'm just kind of go through it quickly, point by point. One of the things you said in introducing it was that it was taken, that I'd done field recordings in Sarawak, but this is a COVID era production commission, so actually there was no field work in Sarawak. Most of it was made at home, across 2 homes, or 4 homes, depending on, but what you heard and you thought of were birds, were actually frogs that I'd recorded when I was in Barbados. So that's also thinking a little bit about voice, and one of the reasons why I thought this was appropriate is to sort of, I think this division of oceans is so human, and I think we really are working with one great ocean, and especially if we're thinking about migration and forced displacement and colonialism, that the frogs in Barbados could sub as birds in Sarawak, to me felt a little bit also like stretching like the limits of voice as well, because it doesn't sound like frogs, does it?
Thank you. Was there something from Will that you also wanted to read, or?
Yeah, I just want to, I feel like authorship is such a strange thing, and I think this project came so much out of a collaboration with Will, and so because he can't be here, he wrote something that hopefully I could just read and share with you. He said, maybe 4 years ago for Liverpool, Aisha and I had wanted to submerge hydrophones into the harbor. Using subwoofers, we would have amplified the shifting sounds of ebb, flow, and industry into a house that backs up to the waters held by Albert Dock. The house was originally built for a pier master and his family. As problems of access arose, we started thinking anew about how sound, speech, and the visual component of this work. So the work had 20 floor-to-ceiling cyanotype prints of archival images of gutta percha trees. So what we have here instead is the city. But how we could sort of create an underwater forest, soundscapey submersion. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to skim through what he wrote. But he said he was interested in working with Leslie speakers, and he talked about the cost of this with a large man in London called Tiny. The proposal was green-lighted, but the price was very expensive. But what he did is he used Leslie speakers, which some of you might know are these speakers that have this sort of rotating strobe. And so one of the things you hear and adds a little bit of the vocalization is the spinning. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's great to bring Will's voice in as well. And maybe we have time for like one last question, but I wanted to come back to something that you mentioned between your works, like as practices of listening as well, not just like voicing and sounding, but listening at the same time. And I also wanted to bring the river back in and this kind of attuning to different bodies of water, or like ecologies more broadly, and how that has come up in all your works. Yeah, maybe some sort of final thoughts on how your practices are also listening practices?
something that I was thinking about while I was listening to Aisha's piece is the fact, or it's not a fact, I mean, it's something that I think I learned a little bit from the piece, or was only able to articulate on listening to the piece. I wrote the sentence down that water became kind of tool to traverse scales and modes, like that the water itself was like, and then this kind of, for me, echoed a little bit in Zahra's work when you said that, sorry if I'm misquoting you, but you said every leakage is a truth being told. There's a leak, and then there's a truth being told that results from that leak. And yeah, for me, there's something about the way that we see a lot of water, and we're basically witnessing a lot of bodies of water either being turned into like violent borders, but they are inherently in their nature and their material things that make the border impossible, or that they challenge the way that borders function, they challenge the violence of borders, and yeah, this applies when we're thinking of like an electric coil that really, really wants to be insulated, but if it has committed unspeakable violence in order to exist, then it won't succeed in being insulated in this way, no matter how many trees it leaks out of, no matter how many tree saps it finishes up. So yeah, I just see a huge parallel in this. Like, I think that we've used our voices in ways that cross borders, like the frog that you were just mentioning, but also your own voice and Deem's voice, that I was like, oh, is it a kettle or is it a person? And is it like all of these things that are like using the voice to perform has that potential for me. And I think a lot about when I said at the beginning of my own invocation that like it's having trouble singing, that there was this divide between who sings as a performer and as a professional singer, and who uses their voice as instruction in a classroom to tell their children off, like all of these. And there is such a vast scale of voice usage and between all of these that we are kind of alienated from. And I think that in invoking more uses of the voice, we can probably experiment and explore 1,001 ways that the voice can break the borders between the tenses, like between now and then, and the past and the present and the future, and also between here and there and here and there. Yes.
Yeah, I think when I think about listening, I refer back a lot, very often, to something that I was told by a friend and a mentor by the name of Bishal Lanvani, who is a musician and a mystic at one of the most major shrines in our region. And he describes the relationship between the musician and the reciter and the listener as ham kalam. And kalam is speech or discourse or communication, and hum is a prefix that makes that collective. So ham kalam are interlocutors, those who sound together. And the idea is that the sound brings the listener to life, but the listener also brings the sound to life. And I think a lot about that when I think about a listening practice. But another thing that comes up for me with the question of listening and the question of voice, because I think this is something that comes up often when I share work in art, and especially sound art settings, where I'm asked a lot about listening to and recording and sharing field recordings that don't contain the human voice, that are recordings of nature or the more than human, or the water, things like that. And I always feel a real strong sense of discomfort with that. For me, the human voice is important here, and also my own voice as an embodied presence, not as a disembodied presence. Because I think that in my case, I imagine, and in my practice, I think of connecting with the land or the river or the sea as a practice that is necessarily mediated, and necessarily mediated by elders, and necessarily mediated by communities that are the transmitters of long histories of knowledge about the sea and the river and the ocean and the land. And it's really, I think that human voice is really central in that story. And I'm not interested in kind of in having an unmediated encounter with the more than human in these regions, in that sense, and in that sense the voice. And listening to the voice specifically comes back for me.
Thank you. Aisha, do you want to add any thoughts on listening?
Sure. I just wanted to say that that was the first time I listened to something from a majlis where I wasn't instantly just very bored and fidgety. Because there's like this thing about comprehension and incomprehension that happens with, when you're young and you don't understand the dialect. No, I was thinking, one of the things I think is really, what I loved about yours is thinking about when things break down and the glitch and what that does to your body and how that makes you both enunciate and listen. I think participating in yours made me think anew about something which I really love, which is radio, which is something I've been working with much more, and thinking about failures of transmission or when things are not smooth, how those interruptions sort of charge our bodies with something, and you become, I don't know, like when you listen with your whole body. Just like when you draw with your whole body. When you sing, you have to sing with your whole body, But then when there's something that breaks down, then it becomes something else. It becomes something surprising. Like when Lily clapped, I remember having that, it changed how I listened this morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a really nice note to end it on as well, this kind of like changing of listening as an ongoing experience and practice. Thank you three so much for your wonderful contributions. Also, thank you to...
Oh, yeah. That also really made me think about how, again, going back to voice and the practice that we just did, and thinking about how when voices come together, something really mysterious happens, where the capacities for bodies just expands in this moment. I've witnessed like moments of zikr, for example, where I've seen people last from Maghrib to Fajr, which is the early evening, to dawn, just chanting, and people who are and it is that power of that moment of the voices coming together that kind of opens something up, that collapses something, and then makes the human body able to do something beyond what's capable when we aren't voicing or sounding together. And I really felt that in this moment. Yeah.
And I think we got a glimpse of that in the collective reading as well. Okay, I'm really sorry that I have to cut it or end this conversation now because we're already over time. But yeah, thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us this morning. And we're going to continue in the Star Cinema for the rest of the afternoon from 3 p.m. Thanks, everyone.